Greetings, welcome, and let's talk. As long as I've been doing these videos, I really cherish the opportunity to go and work and talk with other people. And this is a conversation I wanted to have for the channel for a while now. We just had this conversation. We know each other
22 years.
22 years. Castellana, we have been elbow to elbow through some great times, some dark times. I mean, we've been there when everyone was like just hoping there would be a tomorrow morning and the sun would come up. And here we are, 2+ decades later. And Castellana's story of just Castellana, before we even get into the various battle banners you bear, is one that I wanted to bring to the channel because I find it remarkable. I find your story of how you got to who you are today utterly remarkable. So let me set the stage, and I'm going to hand this off to Castellana. But it's early 2000s, I mean 2001, 2002, and we're at Will Rogers Boy Scout Camp, and pardon the phrase, it was raining that day, and we were all setting up camp. Everyone was wet. It was just, everyone was wet. It's not a question of who was prepared or not. Everyone was caught in the drizzle. And I'd gotten in a conversation with you at some point, and you were talking about you didn't have a place to stay. And you already looked like a drowned rat. With the hair was down, the clothes were wet.
Gerbil.
All right.
I prefer drowned gerbil.
Okay, drowned gerbil. I'll go with that. And also, for a caveat, I have a huge tent, like 12 by 18 oval. So when the next part, I'm inviting her into a very large space that my wife was there as well. But I invited her and the rest of your camp, if you guys wanted. There was shelter already set up, so you wouldn't have to camp in a car, which would effectively turn into a petri dish. And you wouldn't have to camp under an overhang or something. And our friendship kind of got started from there. And
Yep.
We've never really stopped yammering at each other. But when you started in the SCA, I think it's safe to, a safe summary would be you were a young party animal.
Started when I was 18, 19 years
18,
old. So
19.
that's what I was there for.
Yeah. Alcohol, flirtation, storytelling. Definitely some culture to it. I mean, we did both of us enjoyed learning about the history as well, but sunset and shoes came off, the mugs came out, and if there was a bartered circle, I knew who I was going to find there singing up a storm. But that's not in any way, shape, or form who you are now. And it's not even an evolution. This is, to put this in a metaphor, this train got going, stopped, built a whole different track at a right angle to what it was, and went in a different direction. And that direction,
There were a couple of those. I think my train track is...
You've zigzagged your way through
yep.
history, but you've moved mountains in that program. This isn't just minor adjustments. You've reinvented yourself and carried a substantial load doing it. And that's what I wanted to talk about, because a lot of my friends are like, oh, I've been playing this for so long, I can't just stop it. I go, hang on.
Oh, but you
Options
can.
exist. So I'm terrible at long preludes. Talk to us. Where did you come from? How did you get to who you are today?
So like you said, when I joined the SCA, I had very little interest in most of the daytime activities. You would probably not find me on the list field. You certainly wouldn't find me in court. Like you said, when the sun came down, that's when I came out. And it was just fun. Not to say it's not fun now, but it was a very selfish, I'm not doing this for any purpose, I'm not trying to give back to the community, I am just living life.
Which, to be fair, is a valid approach.
Absolutely, there's nothing wrong with it.
Nothing happens in a vacuum. We all have our mundane lives, which are stressful and tiring, and life gives us no break. So there's nothing wrong with saying, I just want to go put my feet up and have fun. That's perfectly valid.
Oh yeah, I am certainly not diminishing anyone's decision to engage in the SCA solely in that manner.
But that is how you frame your
That is
start.
certainly how I started. Yeah.
Okay. And you're not that now.
I am not, for a number of reasons.
How many of those reasons do we want to try and chart in this video?
I think the two biggest ones, and they were fairly recent, I guess, as far as a timeline goes. One, I am a parent now, and
True.
that I am a parent of an autistic teenager. And that parenting and party animal are kind of mutually exclusive lifestyles. You can't do both. Some people do, and kudos to them. It was not something I could do.
Yeah.
The second reason, and again, fairly recently in my story, I was diagnosed with a heart condition. And so I am on heart medication that severely limits the amount of alcohol I can consume. So those are the two. There were a lot of, headspace shifts. There were a lot of, I want to go in a different, direction with my life within the SCA. But had it not been for those two things, I may not necessarily still be a selfish party animal, but you would definitely still see me out at night with a mug in my hand and Bardic.
As waypoint markers go, those are the two tallest on the map.
Those are, as far as the drinking nighttime revelry, those are the two biggest factors that has shifted that.
Now, and to be clear, when Castellana and I met, I was not an officer. I had no formal leadership either in the SCA. So we've kind of come up the rank. I mean, not in parallel, but we've both been regional officers. You're now a kingdom officer. We've both been deputies multiple times, in and out of the College of Heralds. And I want to start with, actually, that's a good track. I want to start with the College of Heralds because,
Certainly.
as I understand it, all of our journeys are unique, and no one really appreciates how much impact you have on someone else until they tell you sometimes.
I know the story we're going for.
My understanding is that the College of Heralds has me to thank or blame, depending on who you are, for your introduction into the college.
Absolutely. With two major points.
Please.
One of the first ones, and it was long before I got into the College of Heralds, we were sitting down, probably outside a Bardic Circle, fireplace chat type thing. And you asked me, who are you in the SCA? What do you want to do?
Okay.
And I said, I have no earthly idea. And it was a case of, okay, well, tell me what you like to do. And I said, I have a background in theater. I've grown up in theater my entire life, both on and off stage. I am an academic and a bookworm passionately. And you basically, hold up, wait. So you enjoy poring over books, and you have a loud voice. You are a herald. I had no choice in the matter. That's not true. But it was clearly, you are a herald.
I remember this conversation. I want to say that was one of the last ones at Cimarron.
I have no idea when that was.
For those outside of Unstu or Northern Unstu, Camp Cimarron was a beloved campsite that closed down decades ago, but when it closed, there were many tears shed because there's a lot of memories there. It's where my wife and I said our wedding vows. So, and I remember that conversation, but I will also say I'm one of those people that puts a huge amount of stock into what we consider sweat equity. How much actual work do you do towards something? And there were a lot of occasions where when I needed a herald, I needed a backup herald, I needed an extra, or all of my planned for heralds booked on me and I needed someone last minute.
That's the second story.
Oh, is this? 40 or 30th year, or yeah.
The I can't remember the name of it. The first Monday trade days campsite.
First Monday trade days, yeah.
That Steps uses. I had gotten into book heraldry.
Mm-hmm.
That was my start, and I was inside at their big hall. I don't think I certainly wasn't running it at that point, but I was learning. I was shadowing people learning book heraldry, learning consultation, and Ivo flies in the door and says, "You have a voice. Come here." And I want to stop and say he never forced me to do anything I didn't want to do. There was definitely a
look of painted desperation on my face.
There was a pause of gaining consent, but it was you come here. Took me out to the field and said, "I am the only herald. I've been heralding for an hour." And my first thought was deer in headlights. I've never done this. I don't know what I'm doing. But my background in theater kind of kicked in, and I went, "Do I have a script?"
Yes, you do.
He wrote it down, first pair, second pair, third pair, order of salutes. So I had a script right there in front of me, and I went, I have a script, I have my blocking.
Which you stopped using that script after the second round. I mean, you had it didn't take long to memorize.
No. I do still have card books that have the script in the front.
Yep.
For, in the case that I need a backup herald. I can hand those books and it has the script in them.
For a little wider context, this was the Kingdom's 30th year celebration. It was a huge Kingdom level event. I was tapped to head up all the list heraldry, and of the 5 heralds who I had commitments from, all 5 of them pretty much backed out as I was driving down the site. You tackled... I wound up only heralding the Rapier Field. All the heavy guys picked tournament formats that didn't require heralds. Say what you will. But between us, we handled like 9 tournaments or something. And there were probably 40 or 50 fighters at any given point in time. It was an insane day. And yes, at no point in time was I giving an absolute order. This wasn't a military draft. But I did have I was at the point where, like, if our friendship gets burned over this, that's a price I'm willing to pay. I've got 40 fighters outside who are really upset that they're not going to get the salutes they were promised, or they're not going to get the ceremony they were promised. Yeah, you did I mean, I'm not saying that as a flattery sense. As a point of fact, from a technical standpoint, I can directly say that you did a dynamite job for no warning, no prep, and that tournament did not lose any weight in the ceremony. You handled it beautifully on your end.
Thank you. I don't know that I would chalk that up to any skill on my end. That was completely due to I had a script and I had blocking and I could follow that.
You had natural projection, and you radiated confidence. Even if your core was shaken, you radiated confidence.
That's a whole different topic.
So that really is how we got Castellana into the College of Heralds. But heraldry is not what you're known for today. Don't get me wrong.
It's part of it.
They still practice heraldry. A lot.
I am the herald in charge of the Steps Warlord consultation table every year. As an official position.
But, and 30th year was... actually, I almost say it was 25th year. It doesn't seem like it was only 12 years ago. But in any event, I remember that event. And that was a big point in your life. I remember that got you noticed by a lot of the voice heralds, and the College of Heralds noticed you. Now, let's bridge the difference between that and a certain coronation. Because this is the arc of this story that I want to hear your take on.
Talking about those train tracks shifting. I think there were a couple of shifts before we get to that coronation.
Couple of switchbacks, couple of demolished bridges.
we mentioned that I started basically as a party animal.
Mm-hmm.
And even at the point where we had this this foyer into heraldry, this event, I was still pretty much predominantly a party animal.
Yeah.
That was, I do love research. I do love poring over books. I am an academic at heart. So definitely getting into consultation was something that was fun for me, but it was still, I don't want to say half-hearted, but it was something to pass the time during the day.
You wanted a place to let your hair down and kick your feet up and sing loud.
Yes, this is what I wanted. The first, mind-blowing is not the right word, the first shock to the system that created the first, I think, gear shift for me in the SCA. Because I love to read, specifically nonfiction, I honestly, and I've tried to think back and find the exact moment, and it is gone from my memory, but I came across something that pointed me down the road of historical Romani culture, historical accounts of the Romanian period, paintings of the Romanian period. And up to this point, I was almost exclusively referred to by a word that we now know as derogatory and as a racial slur for the Romani people. That was my name. That was pretty much predominantly what I was called. And and it may just because I'm in a different part of the SCA now. I don't see it as often, but when I first joined, there were a lot of people who picked personas solely because they felt it gave them the freedom to behave however they want, to dress however they want, to say whatever they want. And for me,
a lot of 1980s fantasy novel type of information there.
And that was the reason for me picking a Romani persona. And at this point, I can't say that I was playing a Romani persona. I was doing a serious injustice to the Romani people.
This may be a slightly offset comparison, but I've honestly heard the SCA comparison of 1980s Romani, using the old pejorative, to actual Romani, has comparing minstrel blackface to African Americans.
That's a great comparison.
Okay.
And
that's I've heard that used. I'm like, wow, are we playing with landmines on this conversation?
Yes, I mean, I think at the age of 18, 19, the predominant image is Disney's Esmeralda. That's
for
what
a certain
we think
generation, absolutely.
For my generation,
yeah.
And that was the persona I played. And at some point, I read something that just made my heart stop. Just absolutely stopped me in my tracks and caused me to realize, basically, oh, I have been...
Now, it's worth pointing out, this was something you discovered on your own. No one shoved this book in your face.
Nope.
This was not a required reading, even for a class, right?
Nope, and I don't believe it was even within the SCA. This is something I just came across. And it...
The critical takeaway, though, is this discovery was entirely internal, self-motivated, and your decision to change, because I want to point out, these are two different metrics. I've read plenty of times I've discovered stuff that was unsettling in one form or another, and you have your moment of processing and dealing with this. The decision to go the direction you did is an entirely separate aspect of that. You didn't have to do this.
No.
And you chose to. You chose a much, what I would argue to be a difficult path.
It has been. But I also, at that point, my options were stop presenting myself as a completely inaccurate and insulting representation of a Romani person, I could then pick a new persona, completely, different time period, different culture, pick a new persona, or I could start doing the research and start trying to the best of my ability, respectfully and accurately play a Romani persona. And no one forced me to do it, no one twisted my arm, no one shamed me, but there was a certain level of internal shame. And it is what I truly felt. I'm going to keep using the word shamed, because that is what it felt like at the time. I've used this word before, and I don't particularly like it, but I haven't found a better one yet. My penance for horribly misrepresenting the Romani culture, my penance was to do it correctly.
To borrow from some modern media, I believe it was the HBO film Chernobyl, one of the famous speeches there was, every time we tell a lie, it incurs a debt to the truth. And that's kind of what I'm hearing is you feel like you have a personal debt to the truth of who the Romani were.
Even though I did not know I was telling a lie, I was working with the information that I had at the time. And when I was presented with newer, more accurate information, I felt the responsibility.
Now this would have been 2005, 6? Is that later maybe?
Later. It was right around the same time that my son was born. So we're talking 2008-ish.
Okay, 2008. So, and this effectively all happened in your home. I mean, this was all an internal discovery.